Well, joining me now live in our Lagos studio to address food insecurity and increase the local production base of our agricultural sector, I have with me farmer and agriculturalist John Akerele. Good to have you on the breakfast show today.
Thank you for having me.
It's time to take seriously the issue about food security, improving our local production base. It's also, did this come to you as a surprise, the 1.85 trillion naira that was spent for food importation while the borders were shut? Yes, we understand Forex has been blocked for the importation of certain food items. That's commendable, just to force local production capacity. But with these figures, a rise of about 62% of what we had in the year 2019, are we rolling back or making progress?
I think, to be blunt with you, we're actually going back. And if you look at the figure, that shows that the government actually spent more than the previous year. Now, the question we should ask again is, in terms of output, is there any significant change that is evident for us to see? The answer is no. So it means that the government will just come up with figures, this amount that was spent during this period. Mind you, the borders were shut. Now, were there increase in the purchase of our local produce? The answer is still no. Is there increase in production capacity? The answer is no. So when you come up and say this is the amount of money you have spent over a period of 6 to 8 months, or let's say a year, the government has actually been in that line of giving out figures that does not match the present day reality. And that is what is happening all over again. So for me, it's not coming as a surprise, because if you check the trend from 2006 up to 2019, our importation of food has actually been on the increase. And this statistics also confirmed that 62.2% again increase. The money we have spent is even more, but the result is not evident. So for me, we are not making progress. Rather, we are going back.
What do you make of the federal government's stance that we're making progress in terms of rice production, for example? This is a staple food, and the government is trying to intensify interventions within that regard. Do you think we're having enough of conversation in terms of having our staple foods increase production within their value chain, and also engage the well over 2.5 million farmers that we have that have to produce all our needs and demands in terms of food?
David, I think the problem we have here in this country is because people who advise our government officials are not blunt enough to tell them the truth. I've said on different fora, when it comes to ban on importation of rice, I said there's no reasonable government in their right senses, thinking rightly, would ban importation of a staple food as such as rice in a country where our production capacity is not increased. In a case where there's no increase in production capacity and the place you are bringing it from, you're actually stopping, you are banning importation of the rice, what that means is that the one that is available will be the survival of the fittest, and there will be an increase in price. Do you understand? So this is what has played off, and that is why we are at where we are now. So how many farmers do we have who are into rice production? What is their yearly output per annum? How many metric tons is that? What is the consumption rate of Lagos State alone, not only of the whole of Nigeria? Then you can say that you want to, you don't ban. I've said before you place a ban on any agro product, be it rice, be it tomato, be it cassava, whatever you want to place a ban on, make sure that each sector you want to place a ban on has gotten to a stage of self-sufficiency that they can feed the 36 states conveniently. And at that point, can you say, yes, we are self-sufficient, then we can now ban our porous border, which is even still porous till now.
Drastic situations call for drastic measures. We are in a fit at this point in time, and then we have to maneuver our way out of it. When you look at reports from the World Health Organization and much more, the population of the average Nigerian who go to bed hungry is also increasing at a faster pace. How do we address this food sufficiency issue now? Having at the back of our mind that we have insecurity challenges, we are not necessarily having mechanized farming, be the order of the day. We're not necessarily processing as much. We're still working in silos. Our storage systems are still poor. We still have power deficit and challenges. We have poor road infrastructure. We're not looking at intermodal means of transportation. The table is full for the Minister of Agriculture as well as other key players within that sector. What sort of conversation should we be forcing now in this year, 2021, to see that we don't have the same mistakes made of last year, and then we can now start consolidating on the little wins? Yes, rice production is improving, but how do we catalyze or exponentially move these figures?
David, I've said it times that number, and I'll keep saying it until this government listens to us. For every right-thinking government that issue out a policy, there is a duration for this policy. There's also a duration for review of that policy to see the effectiveness. Do you understand? in a case where you bring up a policy and then you review it, is it working? If it's working, keep at it. If it's not working, change it. The second point is when you bring up policy and you bring up figures, these figures are just on paper. In present day reality, they are not visible. So this is it. If the government have said they have spent this amount of money in agricultural sector for the past 1 year, then why is it that some of these problems that you highlighted in terms of transportation, in terms of storage, in terms of processing, cultivation, and the likes, we are still having it? Many, David, I've said it here times that number, that food crisis will hit Nigeria, and it will hit us so hard. Back then, that was, I think, July or August, and I projected that by September 2019, well, what we are seeing now is a resultant effect of what we backlogs of issues that were not resolved. And if it's not resolved now, it will keep lingering on and then to even get messier.
You're not answering my question, John. I ask now once again, what sort of engagement do you expect from players like yourself? I've had conversations with African Farmer Mortgagee. I've also had other conversations with tomato processing players and a whole lot more.
The kind of conversation we should be having, David.
There's some level of sideline, and you guys as players have just taken a backseat that, well, this is the order of the day, our opinions don't count. But they actually do. You have to force the hand of government through conversation. You have to call for that round table. When we are having review of policies and analysis of all of the measures that have been put in place, you have to make that effort. You know where your foot pinches in your shoes, so you ought to explain further.
David, have we been having conversations before now? Yes. Are we going to have conversations again? Yes. The point is, when you keep having conversations to people who don't have listening ear, what do you do? Now, this, like I said to you, we have been talking times immemorial. Even till now, we are still talking. In a case where you bring up issues and say, this is what I think we should do, and the government said, yes, we'll do it. But yes, we'll do it is just a lip service, and that is what we are still facing now. So the kind of conversation we should be having is to look at the policies that were being implemented, look at the implementation ratio. Do you understand? Let's have monitoring, because if you said this amount of money was expended, and then there's nothing visible to show for it, then that shows that there's a lacuna somewhere. Either the gap is from the government, but I'm sure it's not from the players in the agriculture sector. I can say that boldly to you.
The 2021 budget has been signed into law. We see the rollout of the figures in terms of capital expenditure as well as recurrent expenditure. But at the end of the day, we've always seen over the past few years that we don't necessarily have the best of commitment or willpower when we look at the sectoral allocation to agriculture. We have to make this the mainstay. Now, how do we increase our investment in the agriculture sector when we still have large borrowings to fund the budget? We still have issues along poor implementation of policies. We are not still attracting local and foreign investment as much as we should. We are not necessarily utilizing our local production base as much as possible. So you cannot necessarily force any new conversations if you're still going by the old rates.
So, David, if you are saying now that there's no money to fund the agriculture sector, then I'll say that is a blatant and big lie.
Okay.
Now, if we can cut down the humongous amount our political class take out of the budget, you see that there's enough money to fund the agriculture sector. Okay? So, if that is done, that still comes back to the political will of the political class and of the government of the day to say that if they have said, see, that's why if you look at the mantra, they have said times that number that one of their key point agenda is agriculture. And this is how many years down the line. And you can see that the results are not evident enough. So for me, that's not the way to go.
So our fixation on oil
we have enough money. We have enough money to take care of agricultural sector, to take care of education sector, even health. If our political class can be humble enough to cut down on their humongous spendings and then channel these resources. Okay, look at it. We have had a lot of borrowings too. So if you're saying we don't have money, so what did you do with the borrowings? Now look at the money you say you have spent in the agricultural sector, and it's just like saying you want to build a house, and the house is costing 200 million. And when you get there, just one loan. Do you build a room for 200 million naira? Then you see that what they say to you and what reality you have on ground there's no equilibrium, there's no balance. So we are asking ourselves, are we sure we are on the right track? Are we sure we're talking to the right people? Is the government really serious? Do we have the political way to say this is what we want to do? And then they implement it to the latter. Let's be sincere to ourselves. We have what it takes to make agriculture sector in Nigeria do better if we have sincerity of the government on our part.
Sincerity is key. We have to have these conversations. Are we on the right track? Thank you very much for your time on the Breakfast Show today, John Akerele. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you very much.